Elon Musk became the first trillionaire in history. But the true power of his fortune may not be measured in money, my friends, but rather in the biological infrastructure that is the most valuable on the planet, the human brain. Neuralink is no longer just a distant promise and has now entered its most aggressive phase of high-density chip implants in the human cerebral cortex. In this episode of Realidade Impressionante, we will analyze the cybernetic engineering behind this interface, the real promise of a cure for depression and paralysis, and the ethical abyss of a mind directly connected to the global computer network, the internet. And while neural interfaces promise to connect the human brain to machines, artificial intelligences are already accelerating medical discoveries. Many uteruses are being created on chips, human teeth can already grow back, and gene therapies are starting to correct diseases directly inside our cells. Shall we understand it all? All of that. Hello, impressed viewers. I'm Carlos Alves, and you're watching Amazing Reality. Neuralink's technology is based on reading and stimulating the electrical signals produced by neurons. Through thousands of ultra-thin microwires that are implanted by a robot, the device's initial purpose is medical. In the field of regenerative medicine, the chip promises to bypass severed spinal cords to restore movement to patients with complete paralysis. The interface was designed to allow patients with spinal cord injuries to regain control of computers, robotic prosthetics, and in the future, maybe even recover some of their lost movements. Researchers are also studying applications for neurological diseases and severe psychiatric disorders, where specific brain circuits show abnormal patterns of activity. It is precisely in this field that one of the most ambitious promises of neuroengineering arises. Treatment-resistant depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder, extreme anxiety, and chemical dependencies. All of these are associated with changes in communication between brain regions. The idea is to use the Neuralink interface as a kind of neural pacemaker. When it detects patterns associated with a crisis, for example, the system could stimulate specific regions of the brain through extremely precise electrical impulses. Instead of completely replacing medication, the technology could act as a complementary tool, offering personalized treatments for those patients who do not respond to conventional therapies. But turning the brain into a digital platform inevitably raises a series of unsettling questions. If a device can modulate neural circuits to relieve symptoms, it also, in theory, raises concerns about privacy and security. Cybersecurity and ethics experts warn that any connected system must be protected against hacks and failures. Although so-called mind control scenarios belong much more to science fiction than to current reality. At least for now, right? The simple fact that thoughts, motor intentions, and brain signals are being turned into digital data opens up completely new territory for human society. Questions about the ownership of this data, privacy, and possible corporate or government abuses are already starting to be debated by researchers around the world. At the same time, another dilemma arises: cognitive inequality. Today, as mentioned earlier, neural interfaces have the same goals. But what if one day they evolve to enhance memory, learning, or even communication between humans and artificial intelligence? If that ever happens, our society could face an unprecedented division between biologically natural individuals and those who are technologically enhanced. And whoever controls these platforms will naturally have a direct influence over one of the greatest transformations in the history of the human species. Neuralink represents much more than just medical advancement. Neuralink marks the start of merging biology and computing. In this way, it brings humanity closer to a future where the last frontier of privacy may no longer be the planet or deep space, but rather the inside of our own minds. Yeah, my friends, I have to ask you an inevitable question, okay? If this technology could really cure a serious disease, or enhance your human abilities, or even in a slightly different scenario where you could connect directly to an artificial intelligence and create a kind of symbiosis, would you accept this chip in your brain? Pause for a moment and leave your comment because it really helps our channel and it doesn't cost you anything, okay? It's totally free. Help me out here because I'm about to bring up another piece of information that connects directly to what we're seeing in this episode, okay? Take a look. And imagine living in a world where your boss can know exactly when you lost your concentration, Or even a criminal investigation tries to access your own memories to find out if you're lying or not, my friend. The rapid advancement of brain-computer interfaces and neural activity sensors is bringing humanity closer to completely new territory. A quiet battle has started behind the scenes at the UN and in top research centers worldwide. At this point in the episode, we will analyze the global race to create laws that, in theory, will be able to protect the most intimate data that exists, our own thoughts. Until not long ago, obtaining high-quality brain signals required complex surgeries and gigantic equipment. But recent advances in artificial intelligence, portable electroencephalograms, and neural decoding techniques are beginning to transform the brain's electrical activity into digital information. Researchers have already demonstrated systems capable of converting neural signals into text and even reconstructing approximate images that are observed or imagined by experiment participants. For the first time in history, my friends, they are now beginning to take the form of data that, in theory, could be stored, analyzed, or even stolen. This is where a major concern of the digital era emerges. If today big companies profit by analyzing clicks, likes, internet searches, and even that seemingly harmless tax ID number you give at the pharmacy, tomorrow the target could be something much more valuable: the unconscious reactions of the human brain. Security experts draw attention to the risk of so-called mind hijacking, a theoretical scenario in which digital stimuli could be used to influence emotions, preferences, and behaviors, all in a way that's imperceptible to us. And even though it's still far from practical reality, this possibility is already enough to mobilize scientists, legal experts, and international organizations. In response, neuroscientists and human rights experts have proposed a new category of protection: Neuro-Rights. Among the principles advocated are the security of cognitive identity, the guarantee of free will, the privacy of neural data, and fair access to enhancement technologies, and protection against discrimination based on brain characteristics using technology. The goal is to ensure that future neural interfaces enhance human capabilities without compromising individual freedom. And this concern is no longer just an academic discussion. Chile, for example, made history by becoming the first country in the world to recognize the protection of brain activity as a fundamental right, incorporating Neuro-Rights into its constitutional framework. Since then, other nations, including Brazil and international organizations, have started discussing similar regulations, thus beginning a legal race to establish limits before neural devices become popular, and a large part of the population might be using them. The battle for Neuro-Rights may define one of the most important issues of our century, because for the first time in the history of civilization, we're not just discussing who controls the machines or our data, but who will have the right to access this last territory, which is truly private: our mind. Beyond concerns, my friends, technology also brings positive changes for humanity. Shall we look at that? For generations, genetic doctors and researchers have dedicated their lives to a mission that seemed endless: deciphering the secrets of human biology to fight diseases. For decades, a single genetic discovery could take years of work and thousands of experiments. But medicine has just entered a new era. The union between artificial intelligence and accelerated computing is transforming the way we understand the human body. Biocomputing, as it is called, is breaking the traditional boundaries of science and turning hospitals and laboratories into true centers of innovation, practically in real time, fueled by decades of research conducted by human beings. With genetic sequences and biologically massive databases, artificial intelligences have started to run true digital laboratories. Instead of relying exclusively on time-consuming physical experiments, scientists can now test millions of hypotheses inside a computer. This capability has enabled the emergence of so-called AI-assisted molecular design. New drugs can be designed atom by atom in virtual environments, thus revealing how molecules might interact with proteins and cells even before they are produced in the laboratory. What used to take years of trial and error can now be accomplished in just a few weeks or even a few days. At the same time, human scientists, automated robots, and intelligent artificial intelligence systems work together, connected in a global network of innovation. This means that a discovery made in a laboratory anywhere on the planet can be immediately used as a basis for research in other parts of the world, thus accelerating scientific progress on a scale never seen before. And this transformation is also profoundly changing medicine inside hospitals. Artificial intelligence is no longer just an experimental tool and has already started working alongside doctors and nurses 24 hours a day. It works as a second pair of eyes that is able to identify patterns invisible to us in exams, medical images, and clinical histories. It also works as an extension of human capabilities, assisting diagnoses, suggesting treatments, and allowing human health professionals. Biocomputing is being built. Treatment may enable a new generation of doctors and scientists who have dedicated their lives to understanding diseases. Artificial intelligence does not replace this knowledge. It amplifies it, allowing new possibilities for treatment, survival, and longevity for us humans to emerge at a speed that seemed impossible not long ago. Shall we understand an example of this now? A practical example. Let's go see. The exact moment when a new life manages to establish itself inside the transformed human body remains one of the most delicate and mysterious processes in medicine. Historically, scientists have always run into ethical and technical barriers that prevented them from understanding the problem responsible for thousands of failed fertility treatments every year. But researchers from the Chinese Academy of Sciences have just broken through this barrier by building a functional mini uterus inside a microchip. And at this point, I ask you to bear with some of the illustrative images I'm using, okay? I won't always be able to show all the real images, but I think this information is very interesting and important, and I want to share it with you, all right? Well, the message has been given, so let's move on from here. For a pregnancy to begin, the embryo with only 5 days of existence needs to complete an extremely delicate sequence. First, it must come into contact with the wall of the uterus. Then it needs to establish chemical communication with the maternal tissue and finally begin the implantation process. The problem is that traditional models and Petri dishes have never been able to reproduce the three-dimensional complexity of this interaction. That's why the causes behind many fertilization failures remain a mystery to us. To solve this problem, researchers developed a small artificial biological ecosystem. Human endometrial cells were inserted into a three-dimensional gel matrix, allowing them to naturally organize into a structure much more similar to real uterine tissue. This environment was set up in a microfluidic chip that continuously controls nutrient and fluid circulation. And one of the great advantages of the system is that the cells used can be obtained through a simple biopsy or even collected non-invasively from the patient's menstrual blood. Although it still does not fully reproduce the complexity of the human uterus, since it does not have blood vessels or components of the immune system, the Uterus-on-a-Chip represents one of the most promising tools in modern medicine. Science is now able to observe the initial moments of human life in an ethical, controlled, and always accessible way. This paves the way for a new era of infertility treatments and for understanding the deepest secrets of human reproduction. And speaking of birth, my friends, what if your teeth, your permanent teeth, of course, could just, in quotes, okay, be born again? Shall we try to understand this? Shout out to dentists. I'm afraid of dentists. Imagine never needing dentures, titanium implants, or dental bridges again to replace that lost tooth. For generations, science believed that humans only had 2 natural opportunities for dentition. But researchers at the Japanese startup Torjim Biopharma have discovered that the body holds latent dental structures that normally remain inactive. The protein responsible for blocking this process is called USAG1. It acts as a molecular brake that prevents the development of new dental buds. The scientists aim to use a specific antibody to neutralize this protein, letting the body reactivate its natural growth mechanisms. And the recent advances in this research have attracted strong interest from the biotechnology sector. The company raised approximately $5.3 million to accelerate the clinical development of this therapy and prepare for the next phase of human trials. In addition, experiments conducted on mice with genetic mutations associated with the absence of teeth showed extremely promising results, with the complete formation of new teeth. In addition, an initial safety study has already been conducted in adult men, marking the first steps of this technology in humans. But the excitement comes with major challenges, okay? One of the main problems pointed out by specialists is the lack of localized control of the therapy. Currently, the antibody circulates throughout the body, and scientists still don't have a method capable of directing this action only to the specific region of the mouth. This raises an important concern. In theory, indiscriminate activation could stimulate the simultaneous growth of multiple teeth in unwanted locations. Imagine how awful it would be to have teeth on your hands. In addition, there's an even more complex biological obstacle. Regeneration depends on the presence of epithelial cells, which are fundamental for tooth formation. Children have these cells in abundance, but adults who lost their teeth many years ago may have a very drastic reduction of this biological material. And even with these uncertainties, the possibility of making human teeth grow again represents one of the greatest revolutions in the history of dentistry. This topic reminded me of neurotechnology, so I researched it and brought this for you. Take a look. Modifying the wiring and circuitry of the human mind and treating serious neurological diseases without opening the skull or implanting thousands of wires directly into the human brain is already possible. Biomedical engineering has now surpassed traditional brain chip limitations. A new generation of smart devices and supercomputers is ushering in an era in which the recovery of the human mind can happen more precisely and less invasively. Yes, there are already revolutionary technologies that show why the future of neuroscience goes far beyond the implants developed by Elon Musk, for example. The first big change comes from the startup Motif Neurotech. Instead of inserting electrodes deep into brain tissue like Neuralink does, the company created a device called DOT, an implant about the size of a blueberry. This device was designed to be installed superficially above the brain, directly on the skull bone. The goal is to treat patients with severe depression that is resistant to traditional medications. Through extremely precise electrical microstimulation, the system aims to reactivate neural circuits associated with mood and thus restore normal patterns of brain activity. The technology has already received authorization to begin clinical trials in humans, thus paving the way for a new generation of psychiatric therapies. Meanwhile, another company is betting on a slightly more sophisticated approach. Cortec has developed the Bright Interchange. This is an intelligent, closed-loop system designed for the rehabilitation of patients who have suffered strokes. Unlike conventional methods, the platform continuously monitors brain electrical activity and responds in real time. If, for example, the motor signal responsible for moving the arm or hand is interrupted by an injury, the technology itself detects the failure and sends corrective stimuli milliseconds later to rebuild the lost connections. The potential of the technology was so significant that it received from the FDA, a kind of American version of ANVISA, the Advanced Therapeutic Device seal. But none of these interfaces could evolve without a massive digital infrastructure working behind the scenes. That's where the Allen Institute's Brain Health Accelerator comes in. In partnership with Amazon Web Services, researchers are using supercomputers to create detailed maps of the circuits and cells destroyed by diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS. Artificial intelligence analyzes massive volumes of molecular data, allowing researchers to identify patterns that are invisible to the human eye, and creating personalized preventive treatments that are able to act before the degeneration can spread through the nervous system. And these technologies, my friends, are meant to treat diseases. But is there any way or any technology capable of preventing all of this? Let's see and try to understand now. Curing fatal genetic diseases with a simple injection into the bloodstream, reprogramming immune system cells to eliminate lupus, or even recovering biological traits lost thousands of years ago? Yes. Biotechnology has entered a new phase. Now, medicine has stopped just fighting symptoms and has started acting directly on the software that underpins our entire existence: DNA. Genetic engineering is turning the biological code into a programmable platform. And this revolution could redefine the very survival of our species. The first major change is happening inside human cells. Rare metabolic diseases used to require complex transplants or palliative treatments, with patients essentially just waiting for death. Now, a new generation of gene therapies allows us to correct genetic errors directly in the bloodstream. Instead of cutting the DNA, the technique modifies a single defective letter of the genetic code with molecular precision. It was thanks to this method that doctors were able to treat babies with diseases associated with toxic ammonia buildup, thus eliminating the cause of the problem before irreversible damage affected the entire body. At the same time, another revolution is happening in immune cells. The famous CAR-T therapies, initially developed to fight cancer, have started to be used against severe autoimmune diseases. In patients with lupus, for example, immune cells are reprogrammed to destroy the faulty components that are responsible for attacking the body itself. And the result works like a complete reset of the immune system, thus offering new hope to those people who suffer from diseases that for decades were considered completely incurable. But my friends, genetic manipulation has gone beyond the limits of human medicine and has also entered even more controversial territory. The company Colossal Biosciences is using DNA extracted from fossils to recover biological traits lost over time. Genetic fragments associated with mammoths and extinct wolves have been introduced into modern animals, thus producing lineages capable of expressing ancestral traits, such as coats adapted to extreme cold, for example. And we've seen that they've already managed to do this with the dire wolf. If you've watched some videos on the channel, you already know what I'm talking about. The ultimate goal isn't simply to recreate prehistoric creatures, okay? The idea is to restore vanished ecosystems and use genetic engineering as a tool for environmental conservation. But in my opinion, the most promising application of this biorevolution is in the fight against cancer, a disease that kills thousands of people every year. By using the complete sequencing of each patient's tumor, of each individual, researchers are able to produce personalized mRNA vaccines for each person. Basically, what these vaccines do is teach the patient's own immune system to recognize the specific mutations that are present in cancer cells, turning the body itself into a highly specialized hunting machine. Instead of attacking everything indiscriminately, the treatment learns to locate and destroy these cancer cells before they can spread throughout the body. Well, my friends, the more we learn to rewrite life, the greater our responsibility becomes to preserve what makes us human. Because while we learn to cure diseases and even connect the brain to machines to merge with artificial intelligence, we will need to ensure that all this power continues to serve us human beings. And not the other way around, not us serving the machines, right? Because the future with biotechnology can be extraordinary, as long as human wisdom can evolve along with technology. If you like this episode, you know what to do. Leave a like, check your subscription, the platform might remove it. I've been warning about this for a while. Take a look. It doesn't cost anything. You have 2 new suggestions on your screen. Just pick one and I'll see you in the next one. I'll be waiting, okay? Thanks, bye. See you in a little bit.